Is libertarianism a practical ideology? I'm asking this question because I just got back from Manchester, New Hampshire, where the Free State Project put on their Liberty Forum. I went there to do a presentation on some software that is in alignment with those values and ideals, and I came back with this question in my mind and also some kind of cold and sickness. Pretty sure it's not the coronavirus, but I apologize if I sound nasally throughout this video. Oh my god, what am I doing? So first of all, I think the question to ask is, what is libertarianism? Well, it's a bit complicated. The term libertarianism historically is actually associated with left-leaning ideologies of equality and the non-ownership of private property, because that's appropriating what belongs to everyone. But most people, when they hear the term libertarianism, think of the United States popularized version of the word and think in more right-leaning ideals where private property is upheld and the individual person's liberty is the most important thing. Libertarians, whether they are on the left or the right of the political spectrum, as is understood in the United States, promote liberty. From Wikipedia, libertarians seek to maximize political freedom and autonomy, emphasizing freedom of choice, voluntary association, and individual judgment. Libertarians share a skepticism of authority and state power. So to keep it simple, I will be referring to the modern US version of it. The libertarian principles, they are a spectrum held by the Libertarian Party, the third biggest party in the United States. And those views can be boiled down to being fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And those views are held by many Americans even when they don't identify as being libertarian. By the way, I don't identify as being libertarian because I don't like labels, and apparently that's something that's also common to libertarians. I don't want someone to box me into something that they think I should think when I maybe haven't even thought of it yet, or disagree somewhat. Libertarians are against government intervention in economic affairs and therefore the expansion of personal freedoms. Libertarians are skeptical of government power. There was one particular way of defining it, showing how it fits into the political spectrum of left and right, that I really like. Libertarians oppose the use of government intervention in order to solve social inequality or in order to promote order in society, which is needed for collaboration between individuals. So those ideas respectively belong to the left and the right of the current US political debate.
God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
So if there's a need to solve some social issue, you don't have to use the government because it needs to be done voluntarily. And if there's some kind of need to have order, you don't have to use the government. You figure out how to do it voluntarily. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the issues of practicality that most people think of when they think of libertarianism. For example, I'm not asking the question, how do you solve the need for roads or an army or education or services that the government usually provides in societies? I think if you want to have that answer, just look at any society that has the government performing these services but doing such a poor job of it that they decide to pay other citizens to do the job better. I'm also not thinking about the issues of practicality when it comes to more philosophical questions, such as if you promote the idea of self-ownership and individual liberty, then how do you say who owns the body when a woman is pregnant and trying to decide whether or not she should have an abortion? Is that body owned by the fetus or the growing child within, or by the mother herself? I'm also not asking about practicality when it comes to something like, if there's only a certain amount of land available, the people who are there first have the opportunity to buy that land or have it given to them by the state, and then there's smaller and smaller land left for anybody else who comes along later. No, I am not trying to answer those questions, even though they may be questions if a libertarian society really comes to fruition. The question that I do have about practicality just boils down to respect and threshold. So ultimately, as I see the libertarian philosophy, you're asking other people to respect other people the way they themselves would want to be respected. What happens when only a small number of people decide to respect each other, say for example in the Free State Project in New Hampshire, but if they grow to a big enough size, the government might just shut them down. Other people might not be okay with what they're doing. They might enforce their will on them because they can. In fact, a lot of the libertarian ideals that do exist within communities like the Free State Project only exist to the amount that they can with present government. There's a spectrum of what it means to be libertarian. Not everybody wants to not pay taxes. Not everybody wants any kind of government service provided at all, such as the military for protection or for infrastructure such as the roads. People range from wanting minimal government to everything provided through the private sector or through voluntary association. But if those people are not able to defend themselves against a larger threat that does have more power, then they will be overwhelmed. And that is the issue of practicality that I mainly see. People who hold libertarian ideals may always become overwhelmed by a greater collective that doesn't agree and will try to shut them down. At the same time, although people who hold these libertarian ideals may be able to ward them off, protect themselves, and defend themselves, it might not be feasible if they're not large enough. And if they wanted to use some kind of force themselves, then that's going against the principle that exists. This also reminds me, this threshold issue of how many people there are in a society and whether or not they will be overpowered or overwhelmed, of arguments I heard when it came to multiculturalism and having new people in your society that may change the culture, or having people from other societies come to a country and saying it would be helpful if they stayed there. It might not make a difference if these people remained where they were, if there aren't enough people who think like them. They may not be able to make a dent at all, or if they do, it would be minor, at least for some very long time. Ultimately, I think that what libertarian proposes comes down to the maturity of the individual, him or herself. If enough people within a society do respect everybody else the way they want themselves to be respected, then I do think that libertarianism could flourish to a greater extent within society. But until that time comes, it may just reappear and be pushed back and reappear and be pushed back over and over again. And trying to force it on everyone else would lose the entire principle. So I think it's good for this ideology to be practiced, such as in these small communities like the Free State Project, but I see it metaphorically as a flower that can bloom and rebloom and take root only depending on the environment. And that flower can have some armor or protectors, but there's always a possibility that non-respectful ideologies can overpower it. And that's just something that those people have to deal with because they can be overwhelmed, and that's just the way it is. It's the only way for it to potentially grow because you can't force it on anybody else. All those other issues that I brought up at the beginning, some of them can be answered for, some of them I think are a bit complicated. They won't even need to be answered until that point where people are thinking in that way. Allow the ideology to come into being more fully. So my answer to the question, is libertarianism a practical ideology, is yes, if other people will leave you alone. As a side note, and this is not to say that I don't have a preference for one ideology over the other, I do think that whatever form of governance people decide to come up with, it comes down to the individuals within it and how they feel. If you had a society where everybody was benevolent, you wouldn't need to worry about someone having a lot of power because they would redistribute that power in a respectful way. And for any ideology that comes up, like this libertarian one, there may be unforeseen loopholes that people can exploit anyway. It does come down to the individual people and how they feel and how they interact with the world, how those systems end up playing out, and how evil comes out of them. What's going on inside of people will affect what comes out of society, and yes, that affects the structure, but regardless of the structure, people will find ways to use that structure to their benefit, depending on what they think is okay or not okay to do. That's what I think about this. Thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Also, please support if you like the content at justthinkingoutloud.tv/donate. Give a like, share the video, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll talk to you soon. I think I'll still be sick in the next one, but hopefully I'll be a bit better really soon. I'd like to wish you a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Oh god, I hate being sick. I hate being sick. Ah!